welcome
Live.
to Nearsoft DojoLIVE. We're live, and in this episode, this I think it's a double whammy. Tulio, correct me if I'm wrong. And we're talking about we're talking with Joyce, who she's the founder of Cluck, and we'll be talking about scams and fraud in rental marketplaces, utilizing technology for business development in travel and tourism. Welcome, Joyce.
Uh, Glad to be here.
Hi, welcome, Tulio. Thank you for letting me co-hosting with you.
Yeah, welcome, Joyce. Looking forward to this topic.
Well, we'll be talking about this fraud in rental, in rental places, and when traveling and facing with scams and facing with there's not very real information on internet, especially on Craigslist. Tell us about why did you chose this topic, Joyce?
Sure. I didn't start out looking for scams necessarily, but what I did do. So I worked at Zillow for 2 years, and I was always looking at things on the side and doing a little bit of research to see what kind of businesses I could start. So I was researching a subletting marketplace for students, because students they often sign 1-year leases, but they're gone over the summer, so there's 4 months of availability there. So I thought, well, there must be some sort of inefficiency in the system, and we could help them there. So I surveyed about 400 students, and I interviewed a couple dozen. And I was surprised at the things that they told me were their biggest problems. I thought, because the real estate market is pretty hot right now in at least major cities where students tend to want to go, that they would be complaining about price and availability. But the number one thing that they said was they ran into tons of scams, like constantly, to the point where they couldn't tell what was real from what was fake. So I thought, well, okay, this is interesting, and did a little bit of research on Craigslist myself. And yeah, they were right. There were a lot of scams on Craigslist. So that's kind of what got me started on this particular path.
So this path you mean by Cluck? What is Cluck?
So Cluck is a browser extension that helps apartment hunters avoid scams on Craigslist. And if you're a landlord, you can also basically advertise that you are verified.
Interesting.
Julia.
Yeah, I'm just blown away. It's like I never realized that. I guess, how does that happen? How would it be a scam? Like, what's the kind of thing you found? I'm curious to discover what gave birth to this idea specifically. What was some of the scams? I'm curious to hear what.
Yeah, so in my research, there's a few different types, right? There's back in 2016, a really popular scam was to put up a fake listing and then have people sign up to do a background check with a legitimate company, and then take the referral fee. But of course, the listing wasn't real, so you're getting a referral fee you're stealing a referral fee from a bunch of people. So that was really common in 2016. Obviously, there's also scams where you pay a security deposit and a down payment, and you're losing like a couple $1,000s, and that happens fairly often as well. The other side of it is it's not just a problem for tenants. Like, it's also a problem for landlords, because I think in June there were 2 articles, one from the Boston Globe and one from out of Canada, that said that these 2 landlords had random people show up at their doors, look in the windows. Some of them show up with suitcases saying that they've already paid, wanting to move in because they thought that they had paid the security deposit and like 1 month's rent for these apartments, but they weren't real. They were scams. The woman in BC said she had 197 different groups of people come to her door, and it got so bad that she had to move into her sister's house for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, so here you are. You look at a listing, and then there's like a background check, and it looks legitimate. How do you actually catch that kind of thing and determine this is a scam? What is your software doing that it can determine that particular case?
Sorry, so the particular case is if
So for example, I went on a site like you said, and and required a background check. So the background check looks legitimate because it's probably a legitimate company. I don't know. There's an affiliate marketing thing going on in the background. How do you actually capture that that actually is a potential scam?
Okay.
How does it differentiate between the legitimate one and one that's obviously a scam?
Right. So Cluck relies on two things. One is just other people. So you can leave comments on listings to warn other people if you think you found a scam. Like for some reason you had an interaction that was strange with the seller. They said they were out of town and you could come and look in the windows, or they wanted you to Western Union them a deposit without at first seeing the listing. So that's one way. But the other indicators are if the price is below market value, like significantly below market value, and also if you found the listing somewhere else for more money, then that's a very clear indication that you're dealing with a scam. And so the extension will let you do a reverse image search. So if the picture showed up anywhere else online, then you'll be able to find them. And then it'll also tell you if the price of a listing is below market value in a particular zip code.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Right.
So how does it work? Is the plugin something the consumer's responsible for, or is it already built into the sites that are using this technology? Walk us through it if you don't mind.
So you would go, if you wanted to use Cluck, then you would go to cluck.co and you can download it. And then you would browse Craigslist like you would normally, and it just shows up like a feature on Craigslist. Same way any other browser.
And it looks like some kind of like a review listing with information. I mean, it creates a virtual consumer feedback form kind of a thing.
So it would be easier to show you with pictures that I don't have any for you. So basically, if you go to Craigslist, the way a browser extension works is that it can overlay features on top of a website as though they were part of the website. And so you don't have to do anything special. If you go to a particular listing, then there'll be a warning bar if the price is too low, and then there'll be another bar that lets you do the reverse image search. There's also a feature now that where you can, I'm working with, you guys interviewed Tammy from Fireball Approves probably a couple months ago, and I'm working with her, so she can basically do research for you and tell you if you're talking to the verified property owner, and that's a button that you can click from any listing on Craigslist. And then there's also obviously a comment section.
Okay, so you mentioned Craigslist a few times. Is that your proving ground, your validation point? Is that where you're doing your MVP?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's also, I think, probably the easiest place to start because it's a huge marketplace. It's also got a huge problem with scams.
So right now it's on the consumer to download, to basically add the plugin. Makes sense, totally get that. Is ultimately the goal to enable companies to just have this automatically built in? Why wouldn't other marketplaces take advantage of something like this to protect the consumer?
Yeah, and likely if this is successful, then they would. But right now I'm still proving out that this is a valid business. Okay.
So I'm curious, what would be the metric that says this is good? This is because I can see a lot of applicability even in retail with this, right? So you're obviously proving it out in hospitality, but what's the sort of metric that says this is working? What are you looking to accomplish there?
Well, like any other business, it's can I make enough money to sustain it, to make it worthwhile? And I think there are 5 things that you need in a business. You need to create something of value. It needs to be something that other people want, such that they're willing to pay some money for it, and that you can deliver it in a way that's satisfactory to them. And it has to be enough money that you can sustain it and that it's worthwhile to keep growing.
So is it a subscription model, or are you planning to do like ad supported? What's the goal?
Right now, the only monetized feature is the skip tracing, basically. So the feature that Fireball Approves provides, which is making sure that you're talking to the legitimate owner of a property. And that is $19 for tenants. And then if you are a landlord, then you can pay to verify your listing. and it's $99, and then you get a badge on Craigslist that other Cluck users could see. That basically says that you've verified your listing, you actually own it. You're not going to steal money.
Okay. So in your product evolution, where are you right now? Is this available to anyone who wants to download it?
Yep, it's been available since late January.
Okay.
In some form or other. And I've been, like I said, I just added that verification feature 2 weeks ago. So there are new features all the time.
So what would be like strategic partners for you, potential partners beyond Craigslist? Who else could be a good partner that could take advantage of this product?
I mean, there are a lot of other platforms that potentially have these issues. Obviously, all the big real estate ones. So Airbnb, like Vacasa, HomeAway, and then like the long-term rental sites like Zillow and Apartments.com, Apartment List, Realestate.com. Yeah, any of those.
And so the intent is for them to, if they provide a service, they get a badge, right? So there's a little bit of confidence that establishes for the consumer, or I as a consumer can just download it or add the plugin and protect myself. Is there any plans? Let's assume this is wildly successful for the hospitality space. I mean, I see applicability in other markets like retail and others. I recently was scammed myself. I wish I had this technology. So I'm curious, is there a plan to potentially cross over into other verticals, or is it strictly going to focus on the rental or hospitality space?
I think so you have to pick your battles when you're a small company.
Right.
You're very limited on resources. So it's certainly for the foreseeable future, it's going to be focused on housing, and like I've considered like used cars as well.
Oh, interesting. So we have a pretty tech savvy audience, and everyone's always curious what the tech stack looks like. What are you building this on? Can you share that with us a little bit about the strategy there?
Sure. If you want to talk like what the tech stack is, I don't know if it's that interesting. Like, but I'm using AWS for all of my cloud infrastructure, using serverless architecture. So Lambda's API gateway. I've got an Aurora DB. Also using Mongo just for caching. On the front end, it's React, React and jQuery. So,
is this going to be available on mobile as well? Or are you going to be extending that like with a React Native or something like that, where I can do it on mobile?
Right. So most people, I think, Craigslist is a funny platform. They don't really have a very good mobile experience, but definitely bringing some functionality to mobile is something that I've thought about. And probably it would just start with a web portal where you could type in the URL of a Craigslist listing, and it would show you all of the relevant information that Cluck has for that listing.
Cool. Just a question: are you using any AI or machine learning for the system to adapt, or can you walk us through your thought process there? How's the intelligence behind the platform making these decisions?
Right. So other than a really, really simple classifier, which basically just looks at price and square footage and zip code, I'm not using any AI. It's partially because I don't have the resources. I'm like one person. I don't have the time to go tune a machine learning model. But also, like whenever you're talking about machine learning problems, you need a lot of data. And the problem with scams is that it's very hard to find a labeled data set. So because like maybe you find one scam and then you use some technique to figure out what looks like this, and is it likely to be a scam, but you're missing out on all of the other types of scams. And the other problem is that, scam detection, it's not like image classification. It's an adversarial problem. So as soon as you get better, then the people on the other side are going to change what they're doing. And so it becomes an entirely different problem. So it's not something that I can do with the resources that I have. It may not be something that anyone necessarily can do very well.
Right. It's a moving target. Makes you think, if they would just use that brain power into something that's actually adding value to society, they might still figure out a way to make money instead of coming up with new scams.
I do wonder about that.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your guiding principle as a company. Obviously, you're starting out. What have you learned so far? Lessons, wisdom you want to share, and sort of where you want to go. What's your vision for the kind of culture you want to create within your company?
So definitely creating good company culture is something that I've thought of a lot. So I've worked in tech for 10 years now. And obviously I'm a woman, so a software development engineer. I think I worked on Windows for a while, and for a little bit, maybe 6 months, I was one of 4 women on my floor, which had about 80 people on it. So like being open and inclusive, and like hearing all viewpoints and making sure that the minority voices are heard. That's always been very important for me. In my own career development, I'd certainly hope that if this takes off, that I could build a company that has that set of morals, or that those set of guiding principles. But I'm gonna be honest, like that is the last thing that I'm worried about right now. Right now, my company has headcount of 1, and that's me. So that's something for the future.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. So if someone was listening that is an investor or a potential good partner that can give you an ability to leap far forward, what would that look like? Who would be the right kind of a party to partner with?
Right. So right now, ideally, I'd like an investor who has some experience in the space. So either in real estate or in fraud detection, or in building marketplaces, two-sided marketplaces. Like ideally, I hear this on Shark Tank. Like, but you want to bring in smart money, and that's kind of my idea. Because I am raising a friends and family round. It's a fairly small round, and what I've come to realize is I've spent like 2 months trying to convince people to hand over money. The way I've started thinking about it is like if I just go work a normal job, like if I had just kept the job that I had at Zillow, I could have self-funded. Like it's not an absurd amount of money. So really, like if I am going to take investment, then I want to make sure that it's that they're going to add value beyond just dollars.
Right, strategic investors. Makes sense. Okay, so am I hearing that one of the lessons learned is if you're going to build something, think about doing it while you have a full-time job? Is that what you're saying, or no?
It's not necessarily what I'm saying. So I guess one of the lessons that I did learn was that make sure that if you think you have co-founders, before you make the leap into like full-time working on your startup, that they are actually invested in the company, and that it isn't just a hobby for them. Because that's happened to me twice now, where I found a co-founder, I worked with them for several months, and they then eventually I said, look, I'm about to apply for these accelerators. Am I able to tell them that if I get in, that you'll quit your job and work on this full time? And by then they understand what it means, basically not taking pay for a long time potentially. And the answer has always been no, which is totally fair. But I think that's a conversation that you should probably have up front, like much earlier.
That's a great words of wisdom to share with other potential entrepreneurs. Okay, so
I have a question. We're already talking about the past and how do you create it, how Cluck was born. But now let's fast forward it. Like how do you see Cluck in like 5-6 years? How do you think your product will be? What will be evolving? What will be evolving to?
Sure. So if Cluck is successful, then when you're looking for an apartment on Craigslist, there basically won't be any scams. that's what happens if Cluck wins. It's no scams when you're looking for apartments on Craigslist.
The only limited on Craigslist because it's like 6 years old. That or you think Craigslist is like the main let's just say like help for Cluck, the main platform for Cluck.
Right. Well, so I've done a little bit of research into apartment marketplaces, also vacation rentals. But if you're looking for an apartment that's less expensive, let's say, then you're probably looking on Craigslist right now, because all the other apartment marketplaces, they need to make money on those listings. They don't have the same scale as Craigslist. Which means that most of the listings that they have are professionally managed listings. So professionally managed listings are more expensive because there's the overhead of paying the property manager. So like basically other marketplaces make sense, but it makes the most sense on Craigslist. And unless that changes a lot, it will probably still be Craigslist.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool. So Julio, should I activate the chat box?
Yes.
Yes. You should press the button.
So Joyce, check this out. I coded this myself. This is very high tech. It's highly integrated with Twitter. Hang on. Ready? Here we go. Okay, Carmen.
Okay.
Chat bot, please.
Chat bot.
So if you have questions for Joyce, please on Twitter at DojoLIve. It's as simple as that.
This is it. Okay, press the button so I can deactivate the chat bot.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. Wow, this is more high. That was way more high end at the way Carlos usually does it. I like it.
There's an app for that.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like you have something really compelling. There's obviously other marketplaces and a bunch of places that could use this. And from what you said, you were kind of researching to create a marketplace, and you stumbled on this problem, so you went out to solve it, which is great. Let's say this is wildly successful. What comes next for you? Tell us a little bit about you, how you got here. It sounds like you're an entrepreneur. You've been trying to figure out what to do in terms of creating a company or a product, a marketplace. Share a little bit about yourself, how you kind of got here, and what's your goal for the future personally.
Sure. Okay, so I had an interesting start, I guess. I was introduced to programming when I was like 16 at computer camp. Believe it or not. I think I've always been into math and sciences. I was safe to say that I was a nerd growing up, probably before it was cool.
Was that in Seattle, by the way?
No, I grew up in Michigan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went to the University of Michigan right after the .com bust, actually, in 2003, and I majored in computer science. My dad told me, like, don't do it, you'll never make money. But who could have known? Who could have known at the time? So I graduated. I went to Microsoft. I actually interned at Amazon in 2006. Met Jeff Bezos because Amazon was only 2,000 people at the time. But yeah, and that's actually one of my biggest regrets is not working at Amazon. Microsoft, I was there for 6.5 years, worked on the original Surface, which was the table, coffee table, and then Windows, and then Xbox. Went to Zillow for 2 years. And in all that time, like this was, the recession happened about that time, and I didn't expect to stay at Microsoft for as long as I did. I always wanted to try something like smaller, but my dad lost his job during the recession, and my brother was going to very expensive East Coast music schools, so they needed help basically. And so I was subsidizing them, so I didn't want to leave my relatively safe, well-paying job. I went to Zillow at some point because I just couldn't stand the commute anymore because I was living in Seattle and commuting to Redmond and traffic is terrible. So went to Zillow all the time, working on random things on the side. My brother graduated last year, and literally like 2 weeks later, I quit to start a company. So let's see, what plans do I have for the future? Well, let's say if Cluck really takes off, like then I think I obviously stay with Cluck for a while. It's my it's my baby. I've worked on it for a while, and I feel like it's solving a real need. And then maybe someday I'll be in a position where I can provide investment for other people and become an angel.
Great. Well, Joyce, it was a pleasure talking with you. It's amazing. We're coming up on time. Unless Carmen has some additional questions.
What would you say to, well, you were saying like we're 4 women in the whole floor in Microsoft. What would you say to all the women who want to start their own company, who want to believe in computer sciences, who wants to believe in a product they can only imagine it? What would you say to them?
I would say, I think a lot of the people that I talk to, when I ask them why don't you just try it, they say, well, but I don't want to give up what I have. I would say, like, your life is long, your career is pretty long. I've been working for 10 years, but I'm really only a quarter of the way through my career. So take risks. Like, you can afford to take risks, especially if you work in the tech industry, because have you seen the labor market lately? It is tight, and you will be able to find a job afterwards if you do fail. So that's my advice. Just like, take risks.
That's great advice. We need more women in tech. Those who join tech actually do extremely well, better than men in most cases, for sure. So let's get more women in tech, please.
Let's just I'll take away. I'm thinking in here in Hermosillo particularly, we think well, computer sciences are not for girls. It's so integrated in society that the girls what actually want in the tech world, they can't get in. So that's quite interesting that they're letting a little bit more. So that the idea that take risk and just go for it. If you're good, then go for it. I think that's good advice.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hope more people take it.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Always enjoy speaking to Trailblazers. I mean, this is I'm going to be downloading this extension myself. I think it's great. And I look forward to seeing you succeed at this, and we can say we knew her when.
Yeah, I hope you're able to do that too.
Yeah, great.
It's actually a quite interesting product because we've all been victims. Well, I mean, you've been victim, Julio. I was a victim scam too. So let's just end this.
It happened to me on Instagram. I was blown away that they got me. I was like, I can't believe that this happened to me. But we need these tools. So.
Yeah, we need those tools so we can have a great travel experiences. Some people will like to travel, at least sometimes.
Well, Joyce, nice. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and we'll stay in touch and wish you a lot of success and a lot of luck with what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes,
so, Carmen, we do have a double whammy this week. I think we have another guest coming up Wednesday, right? Who's coming up Wednesday? Carlos, you still there?
I think so.
I know you're on the road, so who's coming up Wednesday, if you don't mind telling us, Carlos?
Carlos, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry about that. Okay, well, yeah, today we're going to have, Wednesday, we're going to have Jacob Taylor. He is the co-founder of a company called Kahuna, which is a software as a service platform for marketplaces. Okay, so we don't have the topic yet, so I should be getting it any minute now. Once I get it, it'll be right there on the DojoLIVE website and the landing page. Folks, if you're watching, stay tuned for this. Remember, it's
He's a data
Jacob
scientist.
Taylor.
Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, head of data science and Kahuna SaaS platform. So that's what's going to be happening on Wednesday at 3 p.m. 1 Pacific, right here in DojoLIVE.
Thanks, Carlos.
So
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Carmen, as ever. Thank you, Tulio. Thanks, everyone, right here from Carlos Ponce at Starbucks.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.